Stop what you are doing right now, because what we are about to talk about is one of those stories that comes along maybe once in a generation, a 20-year-old kid from the Philippines walking onto the grandest stages in professional tennis and doing something that the sport's most seasoned veterans genuinely did not see coming. We are talking about Alexandra Eala, and if that name is not already burned into your brain, it absolutely will be by the time we are done here today, because over the past few weeks in the 2026 WTA season, this young woman has done something that made the entire tennis world collectively drop its jaw. She went out and beat World No.4 Coco Gauff. She went out and beat World No.6 Jasmine Paolini. And she did not just squeak by on a lucky shot or catch them on a bad day, she systematically took apart two of the most experienced, most decorated, and most physically imposing competitors on the women's tour with a brand of tennis that had coaches, commentators, and former champions scrambling to find the right words to describe what they were watching. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how she pulled this off, we need to step back and truly appreciate the weight of what we are talking about here. Because context is everything in sport, and without understanding the mountain she was climbing, you cannot fully grasp the miracle of her reaching the summit. The WTA Tour is not forgiving. It is not a place where you coast on potential or charm your way through matches on good vibes alone. The women who populate the top 10 of that ranking have spent years, in some cases over a decade, building their games, sharpening their instincts, and developing the kind of cold, ruthless efficiency that allows them to dismantle opponents before those opponents even realize the match has already been decided. When you step across the net from a top 10 player, you are not just playing against the person standing there with a racket. You are playing against everything they have ever learned, every brutal training session, every late night watching film, every pressure match they have survived to be standing where they are. That is the gauntlet Alexandra Eala walked willingly into, not once but twice in the span of a few weeks, and she did not just survive, she thrived. So let us start from the beginning of this incredible two-chapter story, beginning in the golden desert city of Dubai at the Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships in February of 2026. Jasmine Paolini came into that tournament as the world No.6, and if you watch women's tennis with any regularity, you know exactly why that number is not an accident. Paolini is one of those players who makes the game look effortless even when she is working harder than anyone else on the court. Her footwork is elite, some would argue among the very best on the entire tour. She generates disgusting amounts of topspin off both wings. She reads the game with exceptional intelligence, and perhaps most dangerously, she has an almost supernatural capacity to absorb punishment and stay in rallies long after most players would have cracked. She was also a former champion in Dubai, meaning she walked into that week knowing those courts, knowing that atmosphere, knowing what it takes to win there. The matchup on paper looked straightforward. Experienced veteran versus talented but unproven youngster. What actually happened on that court was something else entirely. Eala did not play like a 20-year-old trying to hang with a top 10 player. She played like someone who had spent weeks studying every seam and weakness in Paolini's game and showed up specifically prepared to exploit all of them. From the opening game, her forehand was a weapon of controlled destruction, not just heavy, but placed with surgical precision. She was pulling Paolini wide to the corners, opening up the court, and then either finishing with a clean winner or redirecting the ball to the opposite corner before the Italian could recover. The first set lasted 24 minutes. 6-1. 24 minutes to beat a top 10 player 6-1. Let that number sit with you for a second. 70% of her first serve points won. Clean winners flowing off her racket like it was a warm-up session. Paolini, one of the sport's elite defenders, was being rushed, hurried, and simply outclassed by a player half the crowd had probably only vaguely heard of a month earlier. But sports, as they always do, had a plot twist waiting. Because Paolini did not get to be world No.6 by falling apart after losing a bad first set. She regrouped. She dug deep into that well of experience and started fighting back in the second set with a kind of gritty, clawing determination that defines her game at its best. Eala served for the match at 5-4, and this is the moment if you watch the match where you see the full picture of who this young woman is. Because when she failed to close it out, when Paolini saved 3 match points and broke back to go ahead 6-5, a lesser player would have crumbled. The arm would have gone heavy. The legs would have stopped moving. The head would have dropped. Instead, Eala walked into a tiebreak against a former Dubai champion, in Dubai, with a stadium absolutely packed with Filipino workers and fans who had pinned every single hope and prayer onto her shoulders, and she played the tiebreak of her life. She later said in her press conference that during the changeover she looked around and saw her countrymen everywhere in those stands, and rather than feeling the pressure of their expectations as a crushing weight, she used it as rocket fuel. She hit a forehand winner down the line on her 5th match point, a shot that required nerves of absolute steel and sealed the match 7-6. Third career top 10 victory. All 3 of them in straight sets. That last detail is not a coincidence. It tells you something critical about where Eala's game is right now. When she is operating at her ceiling, the The ceiling is genuinely unreachable for the best players in the world. But here is the thing about that Dubai tournament that is essential to understand, because it is the setup to everything that followed. In an earlier round that same week, Coco Gauff had played Eala and beaten her. Not beaten her narrowly or in a tight three-setter, beaten her badly, 6-0 6-2, a scoreline that suggests total dominance. So when the draw at the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells revealed a third-round match between Gauff and Eala just weeks later, the tennis world's reaction was entirely predictable.
Here we go again.
Gauff, world number 4, two-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most athletically gifted players to ever pick up a racket, was expected to replicate her Dubai performance and reassert her authority over this young upstart. The pundits wrote their pieces. The analysts made their predictions. And then Alexandra Eala walked out onto Stadium 1 at Indian Wells and turned every single one of those predictions into confetti. What Eala and her coaching team did between Dubai and Indian Wells was genuinely remarkable from a tactical standpoint, because they did not just practice harder, they studied smarter. They identified specific, concrete vulnerabilities in Gauff's game and built an entire match strategy around exploiting them. The most important of those vulnerabilities in 2026 has been Gauff's second serve. Despite being one of the most complete players on tour, Gauff has been plagued by double faults this year, leading the entire WTA in that unwanted category. Eala's team saw this and decided that aggression on the return, specifically stepping inside the baseline and attacking the second serve early, was going to be the foundation of the game plan. From the very first return game, Eala was there. She was inside the baseline before Gauff's second serve even bounced, taking the ball on the rise and driving it back with pace and depth that put Gauff immediately on the back foot. The psychological pressure of knowing that your opponent is going to attack your second serve with that kind of intent is enormous, and you could see it affecting Gauff almost immediately. 7 double faults in the first set alone. 7. From a player of that caliber, that number tells you everything about how much discomfort Eala was creating simply by standing in an aggressive position and forcing Gauff to go for more on serves that she might normally float in conservatively. But the return strategy was only half of it, because Eala also completely changed the geometry of the rallies compared to Dubai. When they had met earlier that month, Gauff had been allowed to settle into the heavy baseline exchanges she loves, the kind where her tremendous physical tools allow her to outlast most opponents through sheer power and court coverage. At Indian Wells, Eala refused to play that game. She introduced the drop shot as a regular weapon, dragging Gauff forward to the net repeatedly and then either threading a perfect passing shot or dropping a lob over the American's head before she could recover. She mixed speeds, mixed spins, mixed trajectories, essentially refusing to give Gauff any single rhythm to lock onto and build momentum from. The result was Gauff making errors she almost never makes, looking unsettled in a way that her supporters in the crowd clearly did not anticipate. Eala came back from 0-40 down in a crucial sixth game to break Gauff and eventually closed the first set 6-2, the exact same scoreline by which Gauff had beaten her in the second set of their previous meeting, now flipped completely on its head. Then, early in the second set, with Eala leading 2 games to love and breaking Gauff again with a forehand winner that was simply too good, the match ended abruptly when Gauff approached the net and retired. The injury, a severe nerve issue in her left arm that she described as feeling like a firework exploding inside her elbow, was genuine, frightening, and needed to be taken seriously. Gauff's health matters far more than any tennis match, and nobody who watched that moment felt anything other than concern for the American. But here is what we also must acknowledge clearly and without qualification. Before that retirement, Eala was not just winning, she was dominating.
She was in complete command.
The WTA's own match notes reflect that Eala had controlled nearly every aspect of the contest from the opening point. And crucially, Gauff herself acknowledged it. In her press conference following the retirement, despite the obvious pain and disappointment she was dealing with, Gauff took a moment to say she felt terrible about having to stop because she did not want to take anything away from Eala, who she described as playing great tennis. When the player you were beating stops to tell the world you were beating her, that is as clear a testimony as you are going to get. What happened next is the part of this story that has resonated with people far beyond the world of tennis, because what Alexandra Eala did with her microphone in the on-court interview after advancing through the most bittersweet win of her career revealed exactly what kind of person sits behind all the forehands and tactical brilliance. The match had ended on International Women's Day. Standing in front of thousands of spectators on one of tennis's most iconic courts, fresh off the most high-profile result of her professional life, Eala did not pump her fist or launch into a self-congratulatory speech. She spoke about the women who came before her. She gave thanks to the pioneers who made it possible for a girl from Manila to stand on that court and compete at that level. And then, directly and warmly, she addressed Coco Gauff, her opponent, the person whose injury had ended the match, a woman she had once partnered with in doubles, and she called her an amazing competitor and a role model, wishing her a fast and full recovery while acknowledging openly that winning this way felt complicated and that she genuinely hoped Gauff would be back and healthy soon. That moment sent ripples far beyond the tennis community. It circulated on social media. It was shown on broadcast networks. It became the image of the day on International Women's Day, not because of the score, but because of the character it revealed. At 20 years old, under the kind of global spotlight that breaks most people twice her age, Alexandra Eala showed grace that most veteran athletes spend careers trying to cultivate. Now let us zoom out from the emotional and look at the technical, because it is the combination of both that makes her rise so compelling. Eala's game has undergone a genuine transformation heading into 2026. Her serve, which has historically been a question mark in discussions about her ceiling, has become more reliable and more threatening. Her ability to transition from a defensive position to an offensive one within a single rally has improved dramatically. Her net game, long a gap in her repertoire, has been refined to the point where her drop shots and volleys are genuine weapons rather than low-percentage gambles. But the biggest evolution might be mental. The ability to take a 6-0, 6-2 beating from the same player she was about to face again to absorb the humiliation, extract the lessons, and come back with an entirely new game plan executed to near perfection that is a mental quality you cannot manufacture in practice. You either have it or you do not, and Eala clearly has it in abundance. She is now the first Filipino player to reach the main draw at Indian Wells. The first to advance to the round of 16. She is climbing the live rankings at a pace that puts her comfortably inside the top 30, with momentum that suggests that number is going to keep falling. Her record against top 10 players now stands at 3 wins and 2 losses, with all 3 wins coming in straight sets, an astonishing fact that suggests her best tennis is not just competitive with the elite, it is genuinely superior to it. Looking ahead, the path only gets harder. Linda Noskova waits in the round of 16, a powerful Czech player who presents entirely different tactical problems than either Paolini or Gauff. Deeper in the draw lurk names like Sabalenka and Rybakina, players with a kind of raw power that can neutralize even the sharpest tactical game plans. But if this 2-week stretch has proven anything, it is that Alexandra Eala does not arrive at a match hoping things go her way. She arrives having done the work, having thought through every contingency, and having prepared for the fight with a thoroughness that belies her age. The tennis world spent years talking about the promising young Filipino player with the big forehand and the bright future. That conversation has officially changed. She is no longer the promising one. She is the dangerous one. She is the one that seasoned professionals now look at on the draw sheet and quietly rearrange their preparations around. She is the one that crowds in Dubai and Indian Wells and beyond have fallen in love with, not just for the tennis, but for the person playing it. And somewhere in the streets of Manila, in the communities across the Philippines that have followed her journey from junior prodigy to world-class disruptor, there are young girls picking up rackets for the first time and imagining themselves doing exactly what Alexandra Eala is doing right now. That is the real measure of what these past few weeks have meant. Wins and losses are data. What Eala has created is something harder to quantify and far more lasting: a story, a symbol, and a standard. The whole world is watching now, and from everything we have seen, Alexandra Eala is just getting started.